Alright, hello everybody. I'm Jim, and I should probably do a little bit of a kind of prologue explaining precisely what this is. It's gonna be a series, but that's honestly largely up to you guys. I mean, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Hang on. Okay, so a while back, I was in a Skype call with Blind Skywatcher and Autumn Prose, and I think it was Sky brought up this YouTube video to show us. It was of a guy reading an excerpt from a book by a woman named Sandra Hill, and it was quote unquote romance, but it was one of the worst pieces of writing I have ever heard in my entire life. It was fucking terrible. If I can, I'll find the video and I'll link to it just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about before we actually get into what this whole thing is going to be. But I was dying laughing so badly at this. Of course I had to find out who this woman is. And she actually has written a lot of these romance novels. So of course, I had to buy one, just to see how bad it is. But before I did, Sky and Autumn, we talked it over, and we decided that if I get one of these books, then I have to do narrations of it on my YouTube channel. And it became a plan. I bought the book, I got it from a used bookstore, and this is kind of where that has been leading for these past couple of months. And we decided that I would read the book blind, because I don't want to cover up how bad I think this is. This is going to be like a first reaction to reading this. So I got the book. I got a bottle of liquor. I got a pack of cigarettes. And I'm about to thrill you all with... Hang on, is there a prelude to this? Sorry, I've barely cracked the fucking book. At all. No, okay, there's no prelude. Yeah, I'm about to thrill you all with Chapter 1 of The Reluctant Viking by Sandra Hill, which is apparently book 1 in her Time Swept series. And if you look at her website, which, once again, if I can find it, I'll link it below, there's like 15 books in this series. So if you guys enjoy this video, and you want to see more like this, I mean, well, you're going to see until the end of this book, because I did not buy a fucking trashy romance novel for nothing. This is like the only trashy romance novel I own. This is the first one I've ever bought myself, just because the writing in that excerpt I heard was just so blindingly bad that I had to see this for myself. So, I'm going to at least keep this series up until we're done with The Reluctant Viking. But, if you guys really enjoy it, if you really like it that much, then, of course, we can keep going. I will pick up more books by Miss Hill, and theoretically this series could go on for fucking years. But anyway, let me just get a shot here. Gotta make myself ready for this. My first experience reading trashy romance whatsoever. And I'm doing it for a fucking YouTube video. Okay, anyway. This is The Reluctant Viking by Sandra Hill. Chapter 1. This is the first lecture in the Mind Over Matter series. Before we start, clear your mind of all extraneous thought. Picture yourself floating on a cloud high above the earth. Floating. 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 Stupid damn tapes! Ruby Jordan complained aloud as she stomped into her husband's study to turn off the machine. Rhoda, her ditzy cleaning lady, had probably touched the switches on the complicated deck when she'd dusted earlier. A killer headache pounded behind Ruby's eyes, and she knew it would get worse before Jack got home. Would there be another argument? Ruby stopped short when she saw Jack selecting some of his business motivation tapes and putting them into a briefcase. I didn't know you were home. Why didn't you? Don't start on me again, Rube. Rube? Really? Jack Jordan interrupted his wife, a silken thread of warning in his deep timbered voice. Sorry, okay, I'll try to put on a deep timbered voice when I read Jack. This is fucking ridiculous. I've had it up to here with the fighting. He slashed his throat emphatically with a forefinger to make his point. Me too, Ruby whispered on a broken sigh, then noticed his suitcases lined up next to the door. So he really was leaving. She'd expected it for weeks, but still tears welled in her eyes. Jack, are you sure you want this? How many times had she asked that question in the last 2 weeks? What a fool to think the answer might be different this time. Jack straightened from his bent position over the stereo, turned it off, and rubbed his eyes wearily with the fingers of one hand before darting an impatient glare at her. He still wore the dark blue business suit he'd donned early that morning. Ruby knew that the recession-hit real estate market had put him through the ringer this past year. Oh, this must be set, like, a couple of years ago. When did this book come out? When did 1994! Okay, anyway, sorry, my bad, I'll get back to the fucking story now. 1 month they'd even had to use her salary to pay the bills, a walloping blow to his ego. Jack's wide shoulders sagged now with sadness and exhaustion. He probably hadn't eaten all day. For a moment, Ruby's heart softened, and she almost asked him if she could fix his dinner. Almost. Rube, our marriage sucks. We've been hurting each other for a long time, and I'm tired of trying anymore. I've got to get on with my life. We both do. Excuse me. These arguments tear me apart, affect my work. Ruby listened with rising dismay, and a cold foreboding sealed her lips. When she didn't respond, he continued in a harsh, pain-raw voice. I'm 38 years old, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life with a woman who gets more turned on by her job and her clients than me. Oh, she gasped, stunned by his bluntness. That's not true. It's just like you to put a sexual connotation on everything. Hey, that's about the only thing that works for us anymore, and even that doesn't happen all that often these days, Jack said with a wry grin and a shrug. His smile, as intimate as a kiss, could still make Ruby's heart do cartwheels after all these years, and Ruby had to steel herself to his charm before asking tremulously, You're not saying you're leaving because of sex problems? You know better than that. His smile faded as his bleak blue eyes stabbed her accusingly. We could go upstairs right now and screw each other's brains out. It wouldn't solve a thing. I'm sorry, I'll try to contain my laughter, but this is... Whew. You are so crude. Yeah, well, you won't have to put up with it much longer, Jack retorted hotly. His jaw tensed visibly, but then he softened, touching her trembling lips with a fleeting whisper-soft caress of his fingertips. I'm sorry, babe. I didn't want things to end like this. Can't we just part amicably? Ruby shriveled inside a little at his words. She tried to picture a future without Jack in it. Anguish tore at her insides with steely fingers, and she had to hold her knuckles to her mouth to hold back the pain. Is there another woman? Ruby persisted in a soft, faint voice that broke with the emotion she couldn't hide. Jack turned on her angrily. No, I've told you that 12 times. His glittering eyes challenged her. You can be sure, though, that I intend to find a woman who won't consider me a male chauvinist just because I want to take care of her. Bitterness limned his voice as he took a deep breath and continued. I'll tell you something else. Our kids need a full-time mother. Good Lord, how much time have you spent with them lately? They feel as neglected as I do. The force of his seething reply caught Ruby off guard. She pushed back the hysteria that threatened to rise biliously to her voice and asked, more calmly than she felt, Why do men feel threatened when women become successful? Why can't they accept professional women combining a career and a home? I refuse to get involved in this women's lib debate with you again, Jack said with cold finality, putting more tapes in his briefcase and slamming it shut. I suppose you'll end up with some 20-year-old chippy in spandex who'll talk you into buying a motorcycle or Corvette or something, Ruby mocked cynically, biting her bottom lip to hold back the tears. A sad smile played at the corners of Jack's mouth. He countered in the quick, easy manner that came with years of living together. Nah, I'm thinking more of a 30-ish woman with a Dolly Parton body, a Barbara Walters mind, and a Joan Rivers sense of humor. Jack's grim eyes belied his light banner. Ruby couldn't deny the pain and jealousy that surged through her. Dolly Parton? Get real. I could see Jane Fonda, maybe, but Dolly Parton? What the fuck is going on here? Jack grinned at her teasingly, which gave Ruby the nerve to offer. Except for the Dolly Parton body, I could fill the other two criteria, I think. A glint of humor faded from his face as Jack asked seriously, "What would you be looking for?" Ruby cringed, momentarily deflated at his failure to respond to her offer. And did he really think that she wanted another man? Bruised pride stiffened her neck, but embarrassment soon turned to annoyance. She met Jack's eyes defiantly. Movie star looks would be nice, but aren't the most important thing. Besides, I have to be realistic, I guess. I'm no raving beauty, and at my age, men look at younger women. Oh, Rube, that's not true. You could get any man you wanted. Tenderly, his appreciative eyes traveled over her all-too-familiar body. Jesus Christ, is this how the whole fucking book is going to go? Because, like I said, I've never read any kind of romance novels before. And, oh yeah, another thing I probably should have mentioned at the start. This is going to be minimally edited. Like, if I just break down and have a bunch of dead air, then I'll cut it out. But is this how this whole fucking book is going to go? Does anybody out there actually read romance novels? And if so, is this how these books are, like, start to finish? Because if it is, these videos are going to take for fucking ever to record, because these chapters, I don't even know how fucking long they are. I'm just kind of winging it at this point. Anyway. Any man except the one she needed, Ruby thought. But instead of speaking her mind, she swallowed with difficulty and gently upbraided him. Jack, take off the rose-colored glasses and be honest. 38-year-old men don't look at 38-year-old women. They do when the women look like you. Jack studied her a moment, then went on. You still haven't answered my question. What are you looking for in a man? It obviously isn't me. Pain, stark and intense, formed a huge knot in Ruby's throat, and Jack asked her silly questions. Still, she continued with her pointless description of an ideal mate. He should be intelligent. Yes, intelligence is essential. And successful. Oh, not money-wise success, just good at whatever he does. Okay. Her voice trailed away and her bravado failed for a second. When she regained her composure, she steeled herself to go on. Actually, none of those things matter at all. I just want a man who loves me. You know, the way you used to. Ruby's voice cracked and she couldn't continue. Jack tried to touch her shoulder, but Ruby shrugged his hand away angrily. Don't feel sorry for me. I don't want your pity. Just go if you're going. You're right. We can't keep postponing the inevitable. Go! After a few seconds, she heard Jack moving toward the door. I'm staying at the lake house until I can find an apartment, he said in an oddly rasping voice. I'll call the boys tonight. Ruby forgot her pride then in the face of this final, wrenching end to a 20-year marriage. Lord, how many times had she sworn she wouldn't ask the stupid question, the one most women invariably ask at some point in their lives. Don't you love me anymore? Jack froze in the doorway and then turned woodenly. Ruby's heart lurched. This handsome man could still make her pulse do flip-flops with just a glance. Even after 20 years of marriage, and despite the light sprinkling of gray in his dark blonde hair. Dark blonde? Is that like dirty blonde? I don't fucking know. The past year of stress had etched cruel lines in the chiseled planes of his mature face, but years of disciplined jogging and racquetball had kept his 6'3" body lean and well-conditioned. He'd have no trouble at all attracting a woman. Ruby closed her eyes for a moment at that painful thought before searching his face once again. Where were the sense of humor and seductive sensuality that had knocked her for a loop in high school and lured her enticingly into a young marriage in which she had willingly, joyfully stayed home during those early years to bear his children? How had they let things deteriorate so far? The long silence in answer to Ruby's question told her volumes before Jack sighed, then finally responded hoarsely. I don't know. I just don't know how I feel anymore. I'm not sure it matters. His words sliced through Ruby's heart. Pardon me. We just need time. No, what we don't need is more time to drag this out. I've asked you repeatedly to cut back on hours at your lingerie company so we can work on our marriage. You've refused. I haven't refused, I just couldn't do it right away. Sweet Nothings has stockpiled so many orders. I'm assuming Sweet Nothings is the name of her company. I would have to hire someone to take over some of my responsibilities. By next month, 2 months at the latest, then I might be able... Jack looked at her incredulously and threw his arms out in resignation. I give up. I've been hearing this same story for months. Call me when you can work me back in. Call me when you can work me in. Okay. For a few long seconds, Jack hesitated, almost regretfully. Time stood still for them both, freezing them in a tableau of cloudy nostalgia. Jack's heart-rending expression bathed her in a gentle caress, giving her hope. God, this writing is all over the fucking place. But then again, I haven't been through a 20-year marriage and a divorce, so I don't really know how people feel when they go through that kind of shit. But then he turned and left. Ruby stared at the closed door through a mist of tears. Why couldn't Jack understand how hard she'd worked to build up her custom lingerie company? How hard it was to let go, even a little. She loved Jack. She did. Why couldn't she have both him and her career? A hot tear trickled down her cheek. Regret squeezed her heart as she thought of Jack and all she'd lost. Memories seared her mind. Finally, she yielded to the racking sobs that shook her, rocking back and forth. Ruby cried for a long time until tides of hollow weariness engulfed her. Then she sank down in a well-worn recliner, Jack's favorite chair since his college days, and let her gaze scan the room. She reached for her 15-year-old son's Walkman, needing something to fill the silence. Unable to cope right now with the overwhelming sense of loss, Ruby absently inserted the tape Jack had been listening to, adjusted the headset, and leaned back wearily. Maybe one of the motivational tapes would inspire her with some miraculous message on how to get her marriage back in order. Lord, what a mess I've made of my life. Sorry, I need another shot. I don't know if it's just romance novels, or if it's just me, or what, but this is something else. This is definitely something else. Ruby shifted her blue jean-clad bottom into a more comfortable position as her eyes scanned the tapes on the bookshelves of the study. She wasn't opposed to motivational tapes, but Jack had become obsessed with them during the real estate slump. The worst of them and the funniest had been the coyote tapes. Sorry about that. Coyote. He's pronounced coyote, gringo. How many mornings had he awakened her and the two boys with a coyote howl, declaring that every day should start on a positive note? She forgot the significance of the coyote, something to do with coyotes being able to survive in the wilderness and businessmen being able to do likewise in the coming of bad times or some such thing. What she did remember was the boys hiding their heads under their pillows at the sound of the howl, and refusing to ride in a car with their dad because he forced them to listen to his tapes rather than their favorite rock group. Despite her sadness, Ruby grinned. That seemed so long ago. Eons. She looked back to the shelves, hundreds of the blasted cassettes lining the shelves. Not to mention videotapes, books, and plaques. Everything from the old standby, The Power of Positive Thinking, to You Can Do Anything. She knew what she'd do if she could do anything. She'd be 20 years younger, Ruby thought defiantly. God, that was just... If she's thinking it, it should be I'd be 20 years younger. I'm sorry, I can't help but nitpick. The Sandra Hill well has been poisoned as far as I'm concerned by that god-fucking awful, hilariously bad video that Sky made me watch. I can't take this woman seriously. I'm sorry, I just can't. But I shall try to soldier on. She would give anything for a chance to live her life over again, knowing what she did today. She'd certainly never get involved with another male chauvinist. She wouldn't let herself love another Jack. It hurt too much. In fact, she didn't think she'd get married. Sure, there had been lots of good times with Jack, but men demanded too much of the women they loved. They sucked the very dreams out of them. Barefoot and pregnant, that's how they all still wanted their women. Jesus Christ. Sorry. Ruby wiped her tears with a tissue, rewound the tape, and pushed the play button on the cassette machine, trying to forget her worries and all the decisions she'd have to make. Eddie and David knew their parents had problems, but they'd be devastated to find their father gone. Ruby felt as if she were hanging from a cliff by her fingernails. Would she find the strength to climb up, or should she just give in and let go? Hot tears scalded Ruby's eyes once again as the mesmerizing voice declared, "You can control your own life." Ha! The speaker continued, "Before we start, clear your mind of all thoughts. Picture yourself floating out of your body. Floating. 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 There's nothing in the world you can't have if you want it badly enough. Excuse me. The mind is a powerful tool." "Oh God, help me find a way out of this mess," Ruby prayed aloud. "I don't know if I can live without Jack." This is... "Some people consider prayer the answer to their problems," the speaker said, and Ruby's eyes shot open in surprise. Was she going crazy now, too? Jeez, mental telepathy with a tape recorder. Is there any other kind of telepathy? Huh. The speaker's evangelizing voice droned on and on as Ruby allowed her mind to lift out of herself. Totally relaxed, she felt as if she were floating above her own body. A heavenly feeling. Lighter than a feather, her buoyant body drifted from cloud to cloud in a clear blue sky. Her problems disappeared. The 5 extra pounds she'd gained during these past stressful months melted away. She felt 20 years younger. Even in her sleep, Ruby smiled. God, how long is this? 20 minutes. No, 22 and a half. Jesus, how long... Hang on, I'm just gonna, like, flip ahead. Okay. 32. Alright, we only got, like, 10 more pages till the end of this chapter. It was the odor that first pulled Ruby from her deep sleep. Human body odor. "Okay, Ruby baby," she muttered to herself. "Go with the flow." Sense-dimensional dreams. That would be something to tell her therapist, if she ever got one. Alright. Ruby opened her eyes lazily, then shut them quickly in horror. When she peeked out again, she realized she must still be asleep, awash in the most realistic dream she'd ever had. About a dozen wretched-looking people wearing bizarre drab clothing like burlap sacks crowded her in a longboat, which moved swiftly toward shore. By the smell of them, they hadn't bathed in weeks. Okay, wait, is this just a dream? You know what? No, okay, we're going to get through Chapter 1 tonight, at least. Ruby wrinkled her nose in distaste, and edged away from one toothless harridan. Harridan? I'm gonna have to look that word up. That one is not familiar to me. Who resembled her flaky cleaning lady, Rhoda. She giggled aloud. Imagine, the dream of the century, and she got to take her cleaning lady along. Some women got handsome actors like Kevin Costner in their fantasies with his preference for long, slow, deep, soft, wet kisses that last 3 days in Bull Durham. She got Rhoda. How would Rhoda survive without her tabloids? My God, be you a boy or a girl? A girl. The Rhoda person exclaimed. I would just like to point out that is written exactly how it sounds. You are. Like how people do on fucking Twitter and 4chan and shit. Maybe she's writing in patois? I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt on that one, though I really don't see why I should. But anyway, on with the bullshit. Ruby realized then that everyone in the boat was staring at her, as if she were the oddball. Ruby looked down at herself. She saw nothing unusual in her Nike-clad feet, her blue jeans, and her son's oversized brass balls saloon t-shirt. That was probably the problem. The t-shirt logo offended some people. She started to explain that her shirt really belonged to her 15-year-old son Eddie, who had bought it at the store without her permission. At the shore without her permission. Sorry. But stopped herself. Really, she didn't have to defend herself in a dream. Ruby smoothed the fabric of her shirt over her slim waist and hips, then jerked alert. Slim? Dear Lord, she hadn't been this thin since before her first pregnancy. Not that she was ever fat, but this kind of body tone came with youth, not childbirth and 38 years of living. 38 years of easy living. Ruby discreetly lifted the edge of her t-shirt, peeled away the loose waistband of her jeans, and peeked at her skin just above her navel. Hallelujah! No more stretch marks. Her wish had come true. She was 20 years younger. Smiling widely, Ruby looked back over her shoulder, then gasped. 3 Viking-style dragon ships rode at anchor on the sunny horizon of what appeared to be the confluence of 2 huge rivers. Well, at least we're getting into the Viking shit really quick. I mean, she didn't waste any fucking time getting into this. Hundreds of other ships stretched along the shore or headed in or out of a wide river which must lead to the sea. She hadn't seen anything so spectacular since the tall ships event held on the Hudson River in New York years ago. They were magnificent. A loud thud caused her to turn forward. Their boat had hit the dock and was being tied ashore. Hundreds of people swarmed on the wharf, all dressed in strange clothing. Some of the men wore short tunics that barely reached their knees and left their arms bare, while others wore plain, collarless, long-sleeved shirts down to their hips over tight pants. Belts ranging from leather thongs to ornate gold chains cinched in their waists. Short swords and scabbarded knives clanged at their sides. Long pinafore-type tunics, mostly open-sided, covered the women's pleated linen chemises. Chemises? I don't know. Which trailed on the ground in the back. Ornate brooches with dangling keys or scissors or small knives fastened the tunics together at the shoulders. Ruby noticed an inordinate amount of blonde hair sparkling in this afternoon sunlight, from almost white to fire red and all the colors in between. The older women knotted their hair at the back of the neck and covered it with scarves or cloth headdresses, while others braided their long tresses or let them lay loose down their backs. The men's hair hung shoulder-length and longer, often in braids too, framing faces that ranged from clean-shaven to heavily bearded and mustached. Finely wrought, heavy wrist and arm bracelets of solid gold or silver, studded with jewels, adorned the better-dressed men and women. Some appeared to be museum-quality pieces. Wow! Fascinated, Ruby asked Rhoda, who still eyed her suspiciously, "Where are we?" Jorvik. Jorvik? Where's that? To the Saxons, it be... Okay, I'm going to try and pronounce this word. However, I am not fluent in ancient Viking. And from what I understand, Sandra Hill appears to be a bit of a Viking-era history buff. So, I'm going to try and pronounce this word properly. Sorry if I don't, but here we go. To the Saxons, it be Erfwick, but the heathen Vikings call it Jorvik. Be you a Saxon? Puzzled, Ruby said, huh? Then she mulled Rhoda's words. Jorvik. Something clicked in her mind. Hadn't she read recently about an archaeological dig there? Something involving Vikings? Suddenly, remembrance jolted her. Oh my god, you mean York, like in England. And those boats out there, are those Viking ships? Rhoda just stared at her, open-mouthed. Then a crazy thought entered her mind. At first she dismissed it, but then asked tentatively, "What year is this?" Now Rhoda really did look at her as if she'd escaped from a loony bin. 925. 25. You been locked up for a long time or something? Something? A dungeon, maybe? Or a nunnery, I'd wager? Them nuns do be barmy sometimes. I heard once about a girl who liked men too much, and her mother put her in a convent, and she went stark raving mad just 'cause no man touched her in a year. Good Lord. Rhoda didn't need her tabloids after all. Even in these primitive times she found sources for the sensational gossip she loved. Ruby started to laugh hysterically, just corroborating Rhoda's mental illness assumption about her. What a dream this was turning out to be. Why couldn't she dream about cowboys or knights in shining armor? Why conjure up Vikings in a pre-medieval England? Also, just a question, or a personal question. Did Vikings operate on the Gregorian calendar? At least I'm pretty damn sure that the calendar we operate off of is Gregorian. I'm not certain how Vikings measured time, you know, like in terms of years and shit like that. How 925. Anyway, this is... Oh, God. Well, what else did she expect the way her life was going? She couldn't wait to get back and tell Jack his mind-over-matter tapes really did work. Wait. She forgot. Jack wouldn't be there when she returned. Would he? A brutal headache began to throb behind her eyes, especially when a giant of a man who smelled like a bear she'd once whiffed at a zoo. Why was she whiffing bears? Pulled her and her companions out of the boat and shoved them roughly into a group at one side of the wharf. "Hey!" she protested loudly. "Watch it, Buster!" Buster? Really? Buster? Buster. Buster! The rest of her motley group looked aghast at her temerity, as if she were even more daft than they thought. The Goliath stared down at her. "What's your name?" Ruby persisted, sputtering with indignation. "I'm going to report you to your... supervisor." "Olaf," he snarled and gave her another rude shove. "Olaf, that figures. The name matches the face." Rhoda pulled her back and cautioned, "Shh, ain't ya afeard?" "Ain't ya afeard?" "Do you want to get killed?" Okay, I'm assuming that she's writing in patois here, but this seems a lot more like deep, deep south mountain patois rather than, you know, whatever. Then Ruby saw Jack. Oh, his brownish blonde hair had lightened and hung down to his shoulders, and his black tunic covered a younger, more powerful body, one that would put Arnold Schwarzenegger to shame, because of course we have to have the Arnold Schwarzenegger reference in here. That only 25 pages in, I'm impressed she was able to hold it off for that long. But the face was definitely that of the man she'd been sleeping next to for the past 20 years. Thank God. This dream business got stale quick. She wanted to wake up. At the same time, Ruby's heart thudded wildly at this first glimpse of her husband's new hard body. She felt like a breathless girl of 18 again. "Jack!" Ruby called out happily while Rhoda tried to hold her back. The dolt. He ignored her. He was mad at her, of course. Hadn't he just walked out on their marriage? He seemed to have arrived on one of the big ships, and the attention he aroused indicated that he was a man of importance. Because of course he is. When he stopped to talk to someone, Ruby realized that his right arm encircled the shoulders of a buxom blonde Vikingess in a green silk tunic with enough golden jewels at her neck and arms to ransom a king. Ruby's initial hurt turned quickly into jealousy and then a white-hot anger. Furious, Ruby yelled, "Jack!" again, but he still looked the other way. Lying pond scum! He'd said there was no other woman. So apparently she's having trouble remembering that this is all just a crazy dream. Oh God, this video is going to be long as fuck. Two-timing son of a... Ruby muttered on a sob, breaking away from Rhoda and Olaf to approach Jack. She'd show him. She picked up a clump of mud the size of a cantaloupe, took careful aim, and hurled the clod, hitting him square in the face. She smiled widely in satisfaction. She hadn't been an ace softball pitcher in high school for nothing. The tall figure swiveled, as your eyes wide with shock, but before he could react, Ruby pointed a finger at his stunned companion and warned, "Stay away from my husband if you know what's good for you." Looking as if she'd seen a ghost, the wide-eyed woman backed away, slipped in the mud, and fell flat on her rear. Ruby laughed at the comical picture until Olaf came up behind her, lifted her off the ground with massive arms wrapped around her like steel bars, and squeezed until she thought her ribs would crack. "Put me down, you oaf!" Ruby shrieked. Then she turned to her husband, demanding, "Jack, tell this goon to put me down. He's hurting me." "Not oaf. Olaf," the giant corrected Ruby. Ruby grimaced with impatience and looked up over her shoulder. "Put me down, oaf." He reacted by lifting her higher in the air, as if she weighed no more than a feather. Jack studied her icily, his jaw clenched with suppressed violence. He slowly wiped the mud from his face with a square of linen cloth. His girlfriend wailed loudly at his side until one of his companions reached over with a burly arm and cuffed her into silence. A deathly... Okay, wait. Hang on. So, let's go over that. She was standing behind him, because she hit him in the face with this mud clod, and then he turned around. Or he was facing her, but talking to someone else, and she hit him in the face, and then he, did a 360 out of shock. Or it's just bad editing. That's a possibility, too. Although I like the interaction with Olaf. Olaf seems like he's going to be a ton of fun for this novel. Because, of course, Olaf isn't a fucking throwaway character. He's not just going to be here for one scene and then just gone. They're never going to talk about Olaf. Olaf is going to be critical to the plot of this story. I can tell. A deathly quiet surrounded Ruby. The crowd stopped all activity to watch the spectacle. Well, okay, maybe she shouldn't have hit him, especially in a public place. But he had no right to look at her so angrily. After all, he was the one in the wrong. Adultery was adultery, even in a dream. Okay, so, she hits him in the face with the mud ball. 'Cause she thinks this is her husband. And then she points at the woman he's with and is like, "Stay away from the man I just threw mud at, 'cause he's a adulterous, cheating bastard, you hussy. That adulterous, cheating bastard is mine." I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to venture into what this might say about anything. I just find that funny and kind of odd. Anyway. With a commanding air, the Viking walked purposefully over to where Olaf still held her, with feet dangling off the ground. His well-developed, massive body moved with an easy grace, not unlike her own modern-day husband. Standing so close, she caught the familiar masculine scent of his skin. Jack extended a questioning forefinger to lift her chin in a whisper of a caress. Ah, that phrase again. Ruby leaned into his stroke reflexively, but then jerked back at the sensuous shock that shot hot flames through her. Jack's furrowed brows and intense, puzzled eyes told Ruby without words that he too had been affected by the simple touch. The very air around them seemed electrified. Oh my god. I might need another shot. Oh, God. But then anger transformed Jack's face. Soon she found out why. Taking her chin in a painful, vice-like grip, Jack snarled, "What manner of fool are you, boy, that you dare to strike Thor?" Thor. Just gonna get that out there right now. Get your laughs out, because I sure as fuck am. The main Viking character's name in this book is Thor. Thork. Thor. Right. Son of Harald. Harald? Harald. It's spelled with 2 A's. High King of all Norway. Did they call it Norway? Did they? I don't really know. Like I said, I'm not exactly a Viking history buff. Boy. He thought she was a boy, Ruby realized. No wonder he was upset by the sexual chemistry between them. Well, compared to the way these people dressed, she supposed she might look like a young male in her pants and short Sassoon haircut. And hey, wasn't Jack aiming high these days? Son of a bloody king? Should she bow or what? Who are you? Jack growled again, bruising her chin with his fingers. Hang on, I'm just gonna get a little bit more comfortable here. Do you spy for Ivar? Ivar? Who the hell is Ivar? You dare much with your coarse tongue, boy. Jack, don't you recognize me? I'm Ruby, your wife. Nay, no wife have I, he declared in a steely voice, shifting indignantly from foot to foot. Nor am I a sodomite, he added distastefully, looking at... Yep, I need another shot. Sorry, everybody, I know we're already like 40.5 minutes into this, but I'm just... Nor am I a sodomite. Yes, I require more liquor. Oh, this is fun. This is fun. I should have done this months ago. Sorry, I had to light up another smoke. Jesus. Nor am I a sodomite, he added distastefully, looking at what he obviously considered her masculine attire. Then he released her chin and cocked his head in puzzlement. What now, she wondered. Was it something she'd said? No, it couldn't possibly be that. It couldn't possibly be something that you've said to upset the gigantic fucking Viking who has no idea who you are, thinks you're a boy, and you just attacked him and his girlfriend. Or wench, I guess. Olaf let her slide down his body to her feet, but he pulled her arms behind her back and pinioned them there. Points for style, pinioned them there is a good line. But minus several million for bad writing. Jack stared at the inscription on her chest and his eyes widened. That stupid brass balls logo again. Jack reached out a hand. Thor reached out a hand. Sorry, I can't decide what she's going for here. I've never read this book before, and this is so confusing. Jack reached out a hand. His forefinger trailed sensuously over her bare arm as if asking a question, then grazed her quivering lips for affirmation. He smiled wickedly and nodded, as if answering his own question. At the same time, pleased with the goosebumps he'd raised on her flesh with a mere touch. Then her husband did the unthinkable. He reached out with lightning swiftness and outlined the tips of her breasts. He actually touched her breasts in front of all those people. She'd kill him for humiliating her. I'm sorry, I can't keep a straight face with this. Outraged, Ruby tried to squirm out of Olaf's grasp. Thor's blood! 'Tis a wench! Jack exclaimed, turning with a grin to his companions for confirmation. No kidding. This has gone far enough, Jack. Tell this bozo to release me. This joke or dream or whatever it is has gone on far enough. I want to go home. Explain this Jack you speak of. It's your name, Jack. Wow, this chick is thick. Like, in the head, just like 3-inch thick skull. It's your name, Jack. Jack Jordan. And I'm your wife, Ruby. And I'm tired of this stupid dream. Tears choked her. Why was Jack acting like this? Ruby squeezed her eyes shut tight. She would have pinched her own cheeks, but Olaf still held... Why would she pinch her own cheeks? But Olaf still held her arms behind her back. Instead, she bit her bottom lip until she tasted blood, hoping to awaken herself from the nightmare. It didn't work. No shit. I'm sorry, I know I'm being cruel and unkind here, but I can't help myself at this point. God, this is gonna be a fucking nightmare. No wonder I'm not editing this. Some members of the crowd stepped closer, staring in amazement at her bloody lip as if she were truly crazy. She was crazy. Only a crazy person would find herself in this situation. Perhaps Jack's leaving her had pushed her over the edge. Nay, my name is Thor, the Jack clone said. Heed me well. No wife have I, nor ever want one. I am a Viking. Viking? I have no fucking clue how that's pronounced. We're gonna go with Viking. Because it's spelled how it sounds. Jomsviking. Jack's deep voice rang coldly, loud and clear through the crowd, which nodded and smiled in approval at his putting this woman in her place. Yes, how dare she step out of her fucking place? Is it just me, or like all the guys in this book assholes so far? The people spoke an odd mixture of what sounded like medieval Anglo-Saxon she'd once heard in an English lit course, of course, and what was probably Old Norse. The languages were very similar. Would someone mind verifying that for me? I know it's like minor, it's stupid, it really doesn't matter, but how close are Old Norse and medieval Anglo-Saxon, so far as like languages go? Strangely, she could understand both. Not so strange for a dream, she supposed. Before Ruby could respond to Jack's astounding pronouncement, he stepped closer and his forefinger traced the letters on her shirt. He said the words aloud slowly. Brass balls, looking questioningly at a man standing next to him, then back at her and grinned, apparently understanding what the words symbolized. Several men chuckled behind him. However, his amusement turned to anger again. So, you carry a message to us from Ivar that his men have superior male parts made of metal? Oh my god. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I can't get through a fucking page of this without just, like, face palming. Or at least I would if I wasn't wearing my fucking glasses. Oh my god. He spoke loud enough for all the people to hear. Good lord, she landed in some kind of bedlam. Know you the male parts of Ivar's men from experience, wench? He baited snidely. Shut up, Jack, you're embarrassing me. He took hold of her sore chin and squeezed, looking her directly in the eye. Thork. Mark my words well, wench. My name is Thork. I'm surprised she didn't go with my name be Thork. Maybe this guy is an erudite Viking. Ruby whimpered in pain, but still he didn't relent. Say it. When she refused, he squeezed harder, and Ruby gasped out, Thork, you jerk! Thork! 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 Bork! Bork! Hello, and welcome to the Muppet Show this evening. I'll be the chef. Oh my god. Jerk best be a title of respect, he warned. Oh yes, it means something like Lord and Master. Jack looked unconvinced, but nevertheless released her chin and addressed the mob. Ivar sends the boy woman to challenge us, methinks. Yea, he taunts us to war again. Bad enough he raids our lands whilst we are gone a Viking. A Viking. Or trading. A Viking. Gone a Viking. Is Viking now a verb? Can you go a Viking? The same way you can... Like, I honestly can't think of a good comparison. While we go a Viking. I feel like this should be a musical. No, I'm not gonna sing. I'm still getting over this cold. Besides, that doesn't happen until 3,000 subs. It's tradition. Now he sends this insulting message. We are almost done. We have like 3 pages left. Okay, like 2.5 pages. Brass balls! Ha! Shall we show Ivar now and forever who the best men be? A roar rose like thunder through the crowd. Good grief, who ever heard of a t-shirt causing a war? Ruby tried to express her opinion on their mistaken notions, but Olaf clamped the smelly palm over her mouth. She stomped on his soft leather shoes, and, to her chagrin, he didn't budge an inch. Looking over her shoulder, she saw his smirk as he stated with smug self-satisfaction, Not Oaf. Olaf. Olaf is definitely going to be critical to the plot in some fashion. I can tell. I can just tell. His characterization is just so deep and nuanced. Maybe the guy wasn't as dumb as she thought. We must bring this spy to King Sigtryg. We're going to pronounce that Sigtryg, because it's spelled Sigtryg. Sigtryg. So, yeah, that's what we're going with. Whatever. Thork said. Let him decide the fate of the thrall and whether or not we go to war with Ivar. Another roar of approval went through the crowd. Now you done it, Rhoda whispered in her ear. Sigtryg One-Eye. Be a mean buzzard. Probably lop off your head. Or pluck out your eyes. Or give me a break, Rhoda. You've been reading too many tabloids again. Come, thrall, Jack commanded. The other slaves stay. Just who do you think you're calling a thrall? Ruby protested, finally squirming out of the giant's grasp. I'm no more a slave than you are. Jack had the gall to grin down at her. He was really enjoying her discomfort. Then he surprised her by putting a protective arm around her shoulder and saying, Hold your tongue if you have a fondness for your fair head, sweetling. This crowd smells blood. Sweetling? Ruby smiled, hopeful for the first time that day of a possible reconciliation between her and Jack. But she had only a moment to enjoy Jack's quaint endearment. Chop off her head here and now, one man shouted with perfect timing. Send it to Ivar in that shirt she wears. Ruby looked over at a nodding Rhoda, whose expression said, I told you so. Another person yelled, Why wait? Chop off her head now! She be a spy, maybe even Ivar's woman. What better way to send a message? If the roar of the crowd was any indication, a lot of people liked that idea. Sorry. Instinctively, Ruby moved closer to Jack. Why wasn't he revolted at the idea of beheading her? She'd been on enough camping trips with him to know he couldn't even gut a trout without gagging. He should be her knight in shining armor. Just gonna let that sink in. He should gallantly rescue her so they could ride off into the sunset. Wasn't that the way it was supposed to happen in dreams? Instead, Jack asserted loudly, Nay, the king must decide. Mayhap he will await a vote in the Althing. Althing? Althing. Althing. A-L-T-H-I-N-G. Althing. When it meets next month. Then he turned abruptly and confided to a well-dressed man standing beside him. Selick, we malinger over long. We malinger over long, whilst I carry important messages for Sigtryg from King Athelstan in Wessex, more important than a mere thrall. Jack turned to Ruby once again and grabbed her arm, pulling her through the people who stepped back to make a path for them. I will take this spy to my bedchamber later for a private examination, he disclosed suggestively with a wink to those companions closest to him. Mayhap the women of Ivar's land have mental parts also. Jesus fucking hell. The men laughed at his words, and someone suggested lewdly that he make his examination there and then. Jack stopped, his arm still resting possessively on her shoulder, and he actually seemed to consider the prospect of a public stripping. Humiliated, Ruby tried to kick Thork's bare legs. She no longer thought of him as Jack. Jack would never be so cruel. Thork laughed as Ruby hammered his immovable chest with clenched fist, then picked her up, picked up her struggling, screaming body and deftly slung it over his shoulder, giving the crowd more fodder for laughter. He ordered one man to go ahead to the castle and inform King Sigtryg of their arrival, and another to ride to his grandfather's home in Northumbria and tell him that he would be there late the next day. He told yet another man to supervise the unloading of his ships and to report to him that night. When he settled her in place like a sack of flour, Ruby bit his shoulder to get his attention. With a gleeful chuckle, Thor whacked her with an open palm across her bottom, which arched provocatively across his shoulder. And then he kept the widespread fingers there familiarly, rubbing her with an intimate circular motion. Jesus Christ. Ruby could feel her face flush, not just because she hung upside down. The jerk got another roar of approval when he commented when he commented in an aside to his friends, "Mayhap the woman of Ivar's land do have mental female parts after all. Her arse feels as bony as a winter-starved rabbit." He would pay for this, Ruby vowed as he carried her away. Somehow, some way, she would find a way to get back at this crude excuse for a man. Okay, and that was Chapter 1 of The Reluctant Viking by Sandra Hill. And, if you guys enjoyed this, then let me know down in the comments. And, like I say, I'm going to finish out this book. Hopefully there is liquor enough to last through this, because... oh... Thor knows I'm gonna be needing it. But yeah, like I say, thanks for listening, everybody. This video series is dedicated to Blind Sky Watcher and Autumn Pros, who fucking showed me this horrible shit in the first place. And I blame you both for this. My vengeance shall be swift and without mercy. You bastards. Yeah, I reckon that's about it. Thanks for listening, everybody. Feel free to thumbs down this video, because honestly, this writing is fucking horrible. Or if you liked it, thumbs up, whatever. I honestly don't fucking care at this point. Oh my god. What the fuck am I doing with my life? Yeah, I hope y'all had as much fun as I did. I'll see you guys in the next video.